Okay, so you want to own a plumbing company, put your name on a few vans, and get paid every time water starts appearing where it should not. The problem is urgent, the work is necessary. The technician fixes it, the customer pays, and the truck moves on to the next address. That looks dependable. Sometimes it is. The trouble starts when the phones ring faster. Then the company can turn those calls into completed collected work. Now picture one ordinary Tuesday. At 7:10 in the morning, the first call comes in from a homeowner who found water under a kitchen cabinet. At 7:25, another customer reports a backed-up drain. At 7:40, a property manager wants someone at an apartment before a tenant starts calling the city. By 8 o'clock, every technician is assigned. The board is full. The owner looks at 5 trucks moving across town and sees exactly what the business was supposed to become. By lunch, one technician is still at the first house. Another has left a job to find a part. A third is driving back to yesterday's customer. The apartment job is waiting. 2 homeowners have called again asking where the plumber is. And the owner, who thought the company had finally grown beyond 1 person and 1 wrench, is now in a pickup truck carrying a fitting across town because the whole day has started bending around 1 missing piece. The phones are still ringing. That is not the same thing as making money. The hidden economics of a plumbing company live inside that Tuesday, not just in what the customer pays, but in what had to happen before the payment, how much skilled time the job consumed, whether the work was completed correctly, how far the truck had to travel, and whether the owner had to step into the middle of the operation to keep everything from sliding into tomorrow. Because 2 plumbing companies can own the same number of vans, charge similar prices, and stay equally busy while producing completely different results. One can become a durable company that keeps working when the owner leaves. The other can become a very expensive way for the owner to remain on call forever. Before we follow that day any further, we need to be precise about what kind of plumbing company this is, because the name covers several businesses that only look similar from the street. A residential service company answers homeowners with immediate problems. A drain and sewer company may use cameras, locating equipment, excavation, and heavier machinery. A commercial service contractor keeps restaurants, offices, apartments, and institutions operating. A new construction plumber works from plans, coordinates with other trades, passes inspections, and may carry labor and material costs while waiting for progress payments. They all work with plumbing systems. They do not all live on the same cash cycle. The residential company may finish a short repair and collect before the technician leaves. The commercial contractor may receive repeat work from the same account, but wait for the invoice to move through an approval process. The construction subcontractor may know months of work are coming, yet still discover that being busy and being paid are 2 different events. For this story, stay with the local service and repair company. It is the cleanest version of the ownership fantasy. The phone rings, the company responds, the customer pays for the result. But even here, the first question is not how many trucks you own. It is what the company still controls after the seller leaves. The visible purchase may include vans, tools, drain machines, common inventory, a shop, and the name on the building. The less visible purchase may include the phone number people have called for years, customer records, online reviews, service history, commercial relationships, a dispatcher who knows the technicians, and a licensed person whose status allows the business to operate. Most states, and some local governments, require plumbers to be licensed. In some places, a plumbing contractor may depend on a master plumber or another qualifying individual. The exact rules vary. The important point is that buying the company does not automatically mean every license, permission, relationship, or piece of practical authority transfers with the keys. That can create a strange situation. You can buy the trucks and still lose the person who knows which technician can handle a difficult diagnosis. You can buy the customer list and still lose the person every major account calls directly. You can buy the name and still discover that the seller was the estimator, the senior troubleshooter, the quality control department, and the licensed person holding the entire operation together. The company still exists on paper. The ability to perform may not. Now go back to Tuesday morning. The first technician reaches the house with water under the cabinet. The customer sees a leak. The company sees a chain of work that began before the truck arrived. Something made the customer call this company instead of another one. Maybe it was a previous repair, a recommendation, a familiar phone number, or an advertisement. Somebody answered. Somebody asked questions. Somebody judged the urgency. A dispatcher looked at the schedule and chose a technician. The technician finished loading, drove across town, parked, entered the home, protected the work area, inspected the cabinet, and started looking for the source. The customer may eventually see 20 minutes of repair, The company has already spent far more than 20 minutes creating the chance to perform it. Large companies make one part of this easier to see because they disclose costs local operators usually keep private. Roto-Rooter reported about $83.1 million in advertising expense in 2025. Its filings describe internet advertising purchased by the click and some placements purchased by the call. That does not mean every local plumbing company needs a giant advertising budget. It means urgent demand does not automatically arrive at the correct company, in the correct neighborhood at the correct time, for free. The phone ringing is not the beginning of profit, it is the beginning of work. At the kitchen, the technician opens the cabinet and finds that the visible water is not coming from the connection the customer expected. It may be coming from farther back. It may have traveled along a surface before appearing. The accessible part of the system may not be the failed part. This is normal enough to be important. Plumbing work often begins with a symptom. Water appears. Pressure drops. A fixture will not shut off. A drain backs up. The symptom is visible. The cause may be behind a wall, under a floor, inside a buried line, or connected to work nobody documented. That means the company is not always pricing a known amount of labor and material. It is pricing uncertainty. Experience narrows the range. It does not make the building transparent. The technician can inspect, test, and diagnose. Those are core parts of the job, but the estimate may still be written before the full condition is visible. If the company prices too high, the customer may decline. If it prices too low, it can win the work and lose money completing it, and the cost is not limited to that one invoice. The first job was expected to take an hour. The hidden condition turns it into 3. The technician scheduled for the backed-up drain is now the only person close enough to reach the apartment call, so the dispatcher moves that job. The homeowner with the drain problem receives a new arrival time. The next customer moves later. The entire day starts changing around a condition nobody could see at 8 in the morning. That is the first important distinction. A plumbing company does not sell isolated repairs. It sells a schedule that keeps being rewritten by the repairs. At 10:15, the second technician discovers that the van does not carry the exact part needed for the job. No service vehicle can carry every possible fitting, valve, fixture component, and replacement assembly. Carry too much inventory and money sits on trucks in parts that may not move for months. Carry too little and skilled workers become delivery drivers. So the technician leaves for a supplier. The customer sees an empty driveway. The company sees paid time, fuel, vehicle wear, a delayed completion, and another appointment moving later. This is why the price of a plumbing part and the price of the plumbing job are not the same thing. The customer is not simply purchasing a fitting. The customer is purchasing the system required to put the correct fitting in the correct location, with someone qualified to identify it, install it, test it, and remain responsible for the work. The difference between the part cost and the final invoice has to support more than the minutes spent using a tool. It helps fund the truck, insurance, training, office staff, dispatch, software, advertising, inventory, unproductive travel, and the jobs that take longer than expected. A cheap component on the correct van at 10 in the morning can be worth more to the company than a room full of components across town. By 11, the schedule is still full. That is what makes the next part deceptive. Look at the board and the company appears successful. Every technician has somewhere to be. Customers are waiting. The owner is declining calls because there is no empty space. But a full board can hide a weekday. Take this hypothetical 5-technician company. 5 people, each paid for 8 field hours, gives the business 40 paid hours. At the start of the morning, the owner may picture 40 hours of production. Now subtract what happened. One technician spends extra time diagnosing the hidden kitchen leak. Another loses an hour finding a part. A third drives across a wide service area because the calls were booked wherever demand appeared. One estimate does not proceed. One technician waits for access at a commercial property. Then a truck turns around and goes back to a job completed the day before. The company can pay for 40 hours while selling far less than 40 hours of completed work. The technicians are not lazy. The demand is not weak. The schedule is not empty. The day itself is leaking. This is where many owners reach for the most visible solution. Add another truck. Hire another plumber. Widen the service area. Accept every call. Sometimes that works. Sometimes it takes the problem that already exists and makes it larger. Suppose one company books 10 calls in a tight group of neighborhoods. Another company books the same number across a much wider territory. The second company appears to control more of the market. Its vans may cover more roads. Its technicians may look busier. But the first company spends more of the day inside buildings. The second spends more of it between them. Route density is not exciting. It is simply the difference between a plumber performing work and a plumber watching traffic move. Dispatch creates the same kind of hidden choice. Send a less experienced technician to a difficult problem, and the diagnosis may take longer or require help. Send the most experienced technician to every difficult call, and that person becomes the answer to every question in the company. Soon the schedule is not built around customer demand. It is built around where one senior person can physically be. That looks like expertise. It can also be a bottleneck. The Tuesday owner is beginning to feel this by noon. The technician at the kitchen wants a second opinion before opening more of the wall. The property manager wants an arrival time. The supplier calls about an account question. The dispatcher needs approval to move 2 appointments. The owner answers all 4 because the company has not yet learned how to make those decisions without the owner. This is how a growing business can become more dependent on one person as it adds people. The trucks multiply. The decisions climb back toward the same desk. Now the day produces a different kind of pressure. The apartment job is commercial. The property manager may send repeat work throughout the year, which makes the relationship valuable. But payment may not feel like a residential card transaction at the front door. Roto-Rooter has reported that its residential short-term core services are usually paid when the work is complete, before the technician leaves. Its trade receivables mainly come from commercial entities and commercial insurance carriers and are generally outstanding for 90 days or less. That is one company's experience, not a universal payment rule. The contrast is what matters. A residential repair can finish today and turn into cash today. A commercial job can finish today and turn into an invoice today. Payroll does not accept an invoice. Construction work can stretch the gap further. A plumbing subcontractor may install materials, pay crews, coordinate inspections, compare actual cost with the bid, and wait for a progress payment or money held back under the contract. The company may have a backlog full of work and still need enough cash to survive the time between doing it and collecting for it. This is why revenue can grow while pressure increases. The company hires for the work. The technicians expect wages on time. Suppliers expect payment. Insurance, vehicles, software, and office costs continue. The customer may pay later. The work is complete. The cash is somewhere else. By early afternoon, the Tuesday company has 1 immediate residential payment, 1 estimate waiting for approval, 1 commercial invoice that will not be cashed today, and 1 job that is still open because the correct part was not on the truck. The schedule looked full. The cash result is mixed. Then the 3rd technician turns around. Yesterday, the company completed a repair for a homeowner. Today, the customer says the problem has returned. Maybe the original diagnosis missed another failure. Maybe a component failed. Maybe access was limited. Maybe the customer approved only part of the needed work. A return visit does not automatically mean careless workmanship, but the economic effect is still serious. The technician drives back to the same property. The company pays for the time again. It may use another part. The office handles an unhappy call. The new customer who occupied that appointment slot has to be moved or lost. One unresolved job can consume 2 places on the schedule. And now, after watching the entire day bend around diagnosis, travel, missing inventory, access, rework, and owner decisions, the central constraint becomes visible. A plumbing company's most important inventory is not the pipe in the shop or the equipment inside the vans. It is the limited number of skilled technician hours available today. Those hours expire every evening. A part that does not move on Tuesday can still be used on Friday. A truck that sits for one afternoon can work next week, but an hour lost to avoidable travel, waiting, a missing tool, a preventable return visit, or a decision nobody else was allowed to make, cannot be stored and sold tomorrow. It is gone. This is why the labor question is larger than hiring. The Bureau of Labor Statistics counted about 504,500 plumbers, pipe fitters, and steam fitters in 2024. That category is broader than residential plumbing alone. It also projected roughly 44,000 openings per year over the following decade, much of that from people leaving the occupation or labor force. Most workers in the category learn through apprenticeships that typically last 4 or 5 years and include about 2,000 hours of paid-on-the-job training per year. Demand can increase in a week. Independent productive capacity takes years to develop. That mismatch changes everything. If the company receives more calls than its trained people can handle, the owner cannot simply create another experienced plumber by buying another van. Hiring too quickly can produce slower diagnosis, more supervision, and more return visits. Refusing work protects quality but leaves demand for competitors. Sending senior people to rescue every difficult job turns the most experienced workers into permanent bottlenecks. The company is not constrained by how many phone calls it can receive. It is constrained by how many qualified hours it can deploy well. That is also why quality, dispatch, stocked vehicles, route density, and training are not separate management topics. They are all ways of protecting the same disappearing resource. Now look at what happens when a company tries to solve this at national scale. Roto-Rooter operated through 120 company-owned branch and independent contractor locations at the end of 2025, plus 345 franchise. Its network offered service to more than 90% of the United States population and about 30% of the Canadian population. That scale can create things a small local operator cannot easily reproduce. A familiar brand, national advertising, call handling, territory coverage, administrative support, a large stream of operating data. Different locations can spread the risk that one local market slows down. But the name on the truck does not mean one company directly owns and operates every part of the network in the same way. Some locations are company operations. Some involve independent contractors. Franchisees control their own staffing, pricing, and local advertising while paying for the rights and support attached to the territory and brand. Independent contractors may manage daily staffing and pricing while paying fees tied to weekly cash collections. So the economic question changes depending on what is owned. A truck is one asset. A territory is another. A local operating team is another. The brand that helps make the phone ring is another. And none of them eliminates the cost of turning that call into completed work. In 2025, Roto-Rooter reported about $899.9 million in revenue. Direct service and goods costs were approximately $449.1 million. That left roughly half of revenue after the direct layer. Then came about $247 million in selling general and administrative expenses. Adjusted earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation, and amortization were about $220.5 million. That is a strong result from a mature national operator. It is not a benchmark a small local company should assume it can match. The useful part is the shape of the money. Even at enormous scale, the customer invoice does not move directly from the technician's hand to the owner's pocket. The field work has direct costs. The organization around the field work has another cost structure, and that second structure can move against the company. In the fourth quarter of 2025, Roto-Rooter reported a gross margin of about 49.8%. Residential plumbing revenue grew, yet higher overhead and weakness in other areas still reduced adjusted operating performance from the prior year quarter. A healthy service line did not protect the whole result. A large gross margin did not settle the final answer. Scale solved part of the demand and coordination problem. Scale also created a larger system that had to be paid for every day. That is the macro version of Tuesday morning. The local owner pays in personal attention. The national operator pays in management, advertising, administration, systems, and support. One uses the owner's memory. The other builds an organization so the work does not depend on one person remembering everything. The real test is what happens when the owner disappears. Go back to the 5-truck company and remove the owner for 1 week. The phone still rings. But who decides whether the hidden kitchen leak requires the senior technician? Who handles the property manager demanding an arrival time? Who notices that one route is wasting hours in traffic? Who approves a difficult estimate? Who speaks to the inspector? Who follows the unpaid commercial invoice? Who decides whether the callback is related to the original work? Who keeps the qualifying license relationship in place? If every difficult decision returns to one person, the company may produce excellent income while that person is working. That does not automatically make it a transferable company. Part of what appears to be profit may be compensation for the owner performing several jobs at once: manager, estimator, dispatcher, senior plumber, customer relations department, collections department, and emergency field backup. Remove that person and the trucks remain. The judgment leaves. This is why a buyer is not really purchasing last year's revenue. The buyer is purchasing the ability to produce next year's revenue after the seller stops carrying fittings across town and answering every difficult call. A recent Roto-Rooter transaction makes that visible from another direction. In March 2026, the company purchased franchise territories and assets in San Francisco and Fort Worth for a combined $20.6 million. The acquired locations served a combined population of about 3.3 million people. Management expected them to contribute between $5 million and $5.5 million of revenue during the remainder of the year. That revenue estimate was a forecast, not a completed result. And the transaction does not provide a simple valuation formula for a local plumbing company. What it does show is what a sophisticated buyer believed was worth acquiring, not just equipment, territories where customers live, operating assets capable of serving them, brand access that helps create demand, local capacity that can be connected to a larger system. The buyer was purchasing a functioning path from problem to payment. That is what separates a plumbing company from a collection of vans. So, does owning one work? Yes, when the company can keep that path intact. It needs enough trusted demand to keep qualified people productive, but not a service area so wide that the day disappears on the road. It needs pricing that accounts for diagnosis, travel, overhead, and uncertainty without using a customer's emergency as an excuse for dishonest work. It needs vehicles stocked well enough to finish common jobs without attempting to carry an entire supply house. It needs experienced technicians, but it also needs decisions and knowledge to move beyond one indispensable expert. It needs quality strong enough that yesterday's work does not repeatedly consume tomorrow's appointments. And it needs enough cash to survive the difference between residential payment at the door and slower commercial or construction collection. When those conditions are present, the economics can be attractive. Plumbing systems fail, buildings age, drains block, fixtures wear out. Customers value a company that can answer, diagnose, arrive, complete the work correctly, and stand behind it. When those conditions are missing, more demand can make the owner's life worse. The schedule fills, but the routes stretch. The company hires, but the senior people spend more time rescuing work. Revenue grows, but commercial cash arrives later. The owner adds trucks, then becomes the person every truck depends on. That Tuesday began with 5 vans leaving a shop and a full dispatch board. From the outside, it looked like the company had already succeeded, but the phone call was never the money. It was only a problem entering the system. The pipes create that problem. The company has to turn it into a correctly diagnosed job, place the right person and parts at the right address, protect the limited hours in the day, collect for the work, and do it again without the owner personally holding every piece together. That is what you are actually buying, not the demand. The ability to answer it,